is Sir Alexander Russell Simpson? Sir Alexander Russell Simpson was born on the 30th of April 1835 in Bathgate. He was the second son of Alexander Simpson, Provost of and bank merchant in Bathgate. His mother was Janet Russell, where Simpson gets his middle name. He was educated at the Old Bathgate Academy and was said to have a lifelong affection for his hometown. The town lying halfway between Edinburgh and Glasgow on the Old Coach Road, he would say.
He then studied medicine, primarily at the University of Edinburgh. He was the apprentice to a Professor Goodsir. In 1856, after writing the thesis on the anatomy of the umbilical cord, he gained his MD. Simpson stated that although he did not learn much about curing disease from his mentor, Goodsir did inform Simpson, at his graduation, before he would go to study in Germany, "Mr. Simpson, see that you go regularly to church every Sunday. There is no better way to learn German." Alexander studied at Montpellier, Berlin and Vienna. During these travels he learned multiple languages, which proved of use to him later in his career at international conferences.
Upon returning home around 1858, he would spend the next 7 years apprenticing to his infamous uncle, Sir James Young Simpson, who was at the absolute pinnacle of his career as a world-famous doctor. The young Alexander would be by his uncle's side, both during his university work and in his private practice, learning from the best and the opportunities that it brought. As Sir James's oldest brother, Alexander Simpson, father of Sir Alexander, dedicated much of his efforts to pushing his brother and helping him pursue his career as a world-famous doctor. This was Sir James's chance to return the favour by helping his oldest brother's son achieve the same.
From 1865 to 1870, he operated a doctor's surgery in Glasgow at 1 Blytheswood Square, and for 5 years in Glasgow he worked early days to late nights, establishing a great professional connection, consolidating his position as an obstetrician by his writings as well as his work, and strengthening his own character and self-reliance, and a wonderful readiness to make use of all available means in emergencies, which those who afterwards worked under him used to marvel at. In these years in the West, he also showed, to all who cared to take note of it, his intense and real interest in religion. He referred to the accusation which had been launched against him that he had preached on Glasgow Green, and said that, whilst he had contradicted the statement, he had qualified the contradiction with the remark that if he had had the chance, he would have preached on Glasgow Green or anywhere else the unsearchable riches of Christ.
In 1870, on the death of his uncle, Professor James Young Simpson, he inherited his uncle's large townhouse. He worked day and night to build his reputation, and when the time came to stand as candidate for the professorship of midwifery in Edinburgh, his contemporaries in Glasgow stated if he did not gain the position in the capital city, he would still always have a feather bed in Glasgow. This demonstrated how impressive his reputation had become, and in that same year he transferred to Edinburgh and took over his uncle's position in the University of Edinburgh as Professor of Midwifery. It was stated in his obituary that those who opposed to his transfer to Edinburgh became friends of his through his kindness and being that of a Christian gentleman.
Today, Sir Alexander Russell Simpson is known for being both Sir James Young Simpson's nephew and the inventor of the axis traction forceps, also known as obstetrics forceps, which assisted in childbirth and reducing pain. His reputation was further solidified in the perfecting of craniotomy by the invention of the basilisk and the basilisk tractor, in the attempt to obtain uniformity in the terminology of obstetrics. The development of the clinical teaching of gynecology, and in the difficult pioneer work of establishing ovariotomy and hysterectomy as justifiable and indeed now as routine operations in the hands of surgeons. During his time as chair of midwifery, he saw a steady increase in the number of students attending his class to around 300. He was one of the first to recognise the works of the Americans in relation to operative midwifery and gynecology. In the summer, he would hold an operative midwifery and gynecology class in association with the professors of clinical medicine at the hospital. He was president of the Medical Chirurgical Society in 1889, as well as a member of the United Free Church of Scotland and a strong supporter of the temperance movement.
On the 29th of October 1872, Alexander Simpson married Margaret Stewart Barber, an author who wrote Awakenings or Butterfly Chrysalids in 1892. They had 4 sons and a daughter. Their eldest son, Professor James Young Simpson, and their second son, Dr. Barber Simpson. As for Sir Alexander Russell Simpson, he retired in 1905. He stated he resigned not due to poor health or becoming too weak, but there was always a risk that the ageing incumbent of a chair might become an incubus upon it. His friends did not agree with him, believing he was still perfectly suited to hold the chair of midwifery. As an operator, he grew in strength with each year, and at the time of his resignation, there were few who could claim better results in abdominal surgery than Sir Alexander Simpson. However, after he retired, he would spend his time travelling the world and visiting mission settlements in places such as India. In 1906, he was knighted by King Edward VII.
Unfortunately, in 1911, Lady Simpson, Alexander's wife, Margaret, died. It was said his heartbreak led to him writing The Broken Heart of Jesus, a medical evangelical booklet.
One night in 1916, on a darkened street, by reason of air raids threatened by the nation, to whose medical men he had ever been most kind, appreciative and hospitable, was returning home from one of his beloved temperance meetings. His mind filled with high and kind thoughts when he ended up in a motor vehicle accident, and as a result, Sir Alexander Russell Simpson died on the 6th of April 1916 at the age of 80.
The funeral took place on Monday, the 10th of April, and a memorial service, largely attended by public bodies and friends, was held in St George's United Free Church on Wednesday, the 12th of April. His devotion to religion permeated through his whole life. Written in his pocketbook, carried with him at the time of the accident, were the words, "He knoweth what is in the darkness, the way that I take."
His religion was so real, it entered into every part of his life. And as he lived, so he died. He never saw death, for he ever saw God.